Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, and I will first request Brigadier Sandeep, our President IIRF, to welcome the guest before I start session.
Good morning, everybody. Today we are going to deal with a very important subject, and we couldn't have got better speakers for that. Firstly, Admiral Shekhar Sinha, whom I remember meeting him in Andaman Nicobar Command when he was in the Western Command. He had been IDS also, and his credentials are very well known, and he is quite updated on the issue, and he is very prolific. Then I would like to welcome Ambassador Anil Trigunayat, who is our advisor, and he had been in Jordan, so he has got very good information and ground level information as far as what is happening now, because it is not now it has happened, it is happening from since long, since the formation of Israel and even before that. So I, with much ado, and I would hand over to
Thank you very much, sir. With this, we will begin the session today. Welcome to all the audience, and I'm grateful that you have taken time on a Sunday to come and be part of this session. Today, we are going to discuss an issue that has polarized the whole world. I would say in two very sharp and diametrically opposite perception points. Today, we are going to discuss the 9-month-old Israel-Hamas conflict, which is nothing but a continuation of a 75-year-old unresolved Palestinian problem. Ladies and gentlemen, this problem is highly complex and has many dimensions. All I can say to my audience today is, please do not view this problem solely through the prism of an intense worldwide manipulation of social media that has turned a victim into villain and a villain into victim. So to discuss the above topic today, we have with us Admiral Shekhar Sinha and Ambassador Anil Trigunayat. Though both are well-known faces in the strategic community of India, much sought-after speaker in the lecture circuit, nevertheless, I will like to say a few words about them before we jump into today's discourse. Well, Vice Admiral Shekhar Sinha is the former flag officer commanding-in-chief of Western Naval Command and also been the Chief Integrated Defense Staff at Ministry of Defense, Government of India. Admiral Sinha was commissioned in the Indian Navy as a fighter pilot and flew the first batch of Sea Harriers from London to Goa. After retirement, he became the chairman of the Board of Trustees of the India's frontline think tank, the Indian Foundation, besides being on the board of many more prominent Indian think tanks like ICWA, St. Joe's, USI, Manohar Parrikar Defense Institute, etc. However, much more than that, he is an active member of India's track to diplomacy, hence always current on matters related to geopolitics and India's foreign policy. He has just returned from his missions in South Korea and Russia. Next is Ambassador Anil Trigunayat. He is our former ambassador to Jordan, Hashemite Kingdom of Jordan, Libya, and Malta. He had served in the Indian mission in Cote d'Ivoire, Bangladesh, Mongolia, USA, Sweden, and Nigeria, and served in Moscow as Deputy Chief of Mission. He superannuated in 2016 and now Distinguished Fellow and Head of the West Asia Expert Group at the Vivekananda International Foundation, member of Governing Council Raisina House, visiting fellow and advisor of Asia Institute of Diplomacy, International Affairs, Nepal Institute of International Cooperation and Engagement, and we are lucky to have him as a patron in the Indus International Research Foundation, the platform on which this talk has been organized today. So today's topic, ladies and gentlemen, will be dealt in two parts. In the first part, I will give a brief 10 minutes video presentation to highlight some of the distortions and myths surrounding this issue. In the second part, Ambassador Trigunayat and then Admiral Sinha will be invited for their expert comments for 15 to 20 minutes each, followed by a question and answer session. So watch this video. Hamas, Israel, Palestine, a tangled knot, a problem that defies solution. But why? Look at this map. Can you locate Israel in it? Yes. That tiny red patch on this map is Israel. And the vast green part, Yes, that is Arab Islamic world. Ask any anti Semite, average Arab, and they will tell you. They will tell you that that tiny dot, which is difficult even to locate on an Islamic map, which is the only piece of land in this world that belongs to the Jews as their original ancestral homeland, a Jewish homeland which they got through the UN mandate after several thousand years of wandering in the world, suffering innumerable prosecution, including the Holocaust, a land that holds not even 1% of the total Arab area as shown on the map, a home that has barely a population of 9 million, of which 2 million are Arab Israelis. And yet, this tiny dot has been construed a serious threat to 488.92 million Muslims living around it. Yes, you heard it right. One tiny Jewish state is a threat to 16 big and small Islamic states in Arab. Just 9 million Israelis are threat to 489 million Muslims living around it. Doesn't it sound absurd and ironic? Existence of a non-Islamic Jewish state is not acceptable in Arab world. Since 1948, Muslims all over the world had one and the only one solution to the Israeli problem: wipe the Jewish state out of the Arab land. River to sea, make Palestine free is the slogan. Give not an inch to Jews, that is the resolve. This makes it abundantly clear that annihilation of 9 million Israelis is the only Islamic solution that the Arabs are willing to settle for. It matters not to pro-Palestinian if it amounts to advocating a genocide of 7 million Jews. Ironically, again, it is not the 489 million Muslim Arab who the propaganda calls genocidal, but a tiny Israel who simply wants to survive this genocidal environment is accused of genocide. Killing 7 million Jews is explicitly mentioned in many of Arab declarations.
Israel will exist only till Islam obliterates it as it obliterated many others. Hamas Covenant 1988.
Wonderful. If the solution is so simple for Arabs, then why this problem is taking so long to solve? So, there is a catch in this proposition. That catch is that 9 million Israelis, which include 2 million Israeli Arabs, have refused to oblige their Arab neighbors to get themselves destroyed and annihilated by them. Obviously, anti-Israelis are very upset and unhappy about it. Unhappy that Israel is not letting them fulfill their vilest of the wishes. Therefore, the historical Arab-Palestine grievance revolves around this core grudge. You see, coexistence and sharing of land had never been on the table in Arab-Palestinian negotiations. This became the genesis, the root cause, and the real basis for the perennial Palestinian victimhood narrative. While Egypt, Jordan, Saudi Arabia, UAE, and Oman became wise with time and made compromises in accepting the Israeli right to exist, radical Arab Islamic jihadi elements like Hamas, Hezbollah, Houthis, Syria, Iraq, and Iran still blame Israel for not letting itself be destroyed by them completely. Nothing less than total annihilation of Israel is acceptable to them. This is a declared position of Hamas, Hezbollah, Houthis, and Iran even today. Gentlemen, other misinformation flooding social media space are that Israel is a colonial power, that it caused Nakba in 1948, that it steals land, that it is a racist power, that it practices apartheid, that it carries out genocide, that it kills women and children, etc., etc. Now, the massive Hamas propaganda unleashed in recent times has obscured the reality surrounding the above allegations. In fact, each heading displayed on the screen deserves a separate full-time discussion to unravel the truth. However, due to paucity of time, I will let the talking in this regard be done by a very powerful speaker. And that speaker, gentlemen, is Mr. Musab Hassan Yusuf, an ex-Gaza terrorist, who himself had a career in Hamas terrorism for 14 long years. He has spent considerable time in Israeli jails. On change of heart, he became a prominent vocal critic of Hamas. Another distinction of Mr. Musab is that he is the eldest son of Hassan Yusuf, a co-founder of Hamas. Musab was born and brought up in Hamas ecosystem. Therefore, who can be more authentic than Mr. Musab to talk on children of Gaza and the flawed policies of Hamas? Listen to him.
Hi everyone, good afternoon. Ambassador, thank you for having me and giving me this important podium. Such a difficult situation. I see lots of division and confusion, lots of hatred, lots of misinformation. And everybody speaks on behalf of the children and on behalf of the innocent. But I am not sure about their real intention. But today I can speak on the authority of a Palestinian child, someone who grew up in that culture. Hamas' first crime against children in the Palestinian societies, it's the religious, ideological indoctrination that I had to go through, with one intention in mind: to annihilate the state of Israel. This is Hamas' primary goal. In this truth, there is no confusion. I speak as first-hand witness on Hamas and their intention. My father is one of the founders of Hamas movement. I was there when Hamas was born. I am not a part of propaganda. I don't work for nobody. I only represent myself. And on this authority I speak. So don't be mistaken and take my words very carefully. Hamas is committing a crime against this generation and the next generations to come. So blaming Israel is not going to solve the problem. When there are people out there who want you to cease to exist, this is when they push you to the corner and you have no other choice but to fight. I'm in the same position. How it feels like when you have hundreds of millions of people who sentenced you to death because of false narratives. Because people are in denial of the truth that Israel is not targeting civilians on a purpose. They are not killing in Gaza for sport. This is what Hamas did on October 7. It was an actual genocide that the world doesn't want to admit. When the higher interest of humanity is at risk, when people kill hundreds and thousands of civilians by the name of religion and by the name of ideology, somebody has to stand up. I am a son of that conflict and I know exactly what's going on there, not only from the Palestinian point of view, but also from the Israeli point of view.
How should Israel have responded?
If 7th of October did not happen in a vacuum.
How should Israel have responded to that terror attack? It's a straightforward question.
Because by ending the siege, by ending apartheid, by realizing that this is not a sustainable solution to keep oppressing a people, of course you're going to have resistance.
Yeah, I would say that I agree with you. A lot of the settlements, particularly the expanded settlements, I completely agree with you. But when you say that, of course, October 7th is going to happen, no, absolutely not. There is nothing to justify a terror attack on that scale. What is your view about expanding settlements in the way that Israel's been doing?
Settlements, or what so-called settlements, those are cities of hundreds of thousands of people. This was the result of the 1967 war, when the Arab countries united wanted to annihilate the state of Israel. Arabs had their opportunity back in 1948 to declare their independence. They had equal opportunity like the Jewish people. The Jewish people fought the British colonialism, and they shed blood, and eventually they earned their independence. But in 1948, instead of the Arabs declaring their independence, they declared war against the Jewish people. There was no such Palestine at that time. There were a British era of colonialism. Jews, Arabs, Druze, Christians, everybody in that area was called the Palestinian. The Palestinian is a colonial entity. It was not a country, and it was not a nationality. So now, when we convinced ourselves that we were Palestinians because of Yasser Arafat wanted us to be Palestinians, the chaos had begun. And now Palestinian is nothing but the victim narrative, that we don't want to take responsibility for the choices that we have made. 70 years of conflict. Palestinians, or what so-called Palestinians, it's not a real thing. There are Arab children, they have the birthright to be there, and Israel has 2 million of those. So the allegation of apartheid doesn't make sense. It's just a broken record by all those who have been trying to delegitimize Israel. It has nothing to do in reality. Then 1967 borders. This was area which is the West Bank. It was under the control of Jordan. And the Gaza was under the control of Egypt. They were Egypt and Jordanian territories. It was not a Palestine. Today, Israel has peace with Egypt and with Jordan. So when the Arabs launched a war and they lost the war in 1967, Israel captured some territory. This is the consequences of war. This is and the Arabs don't want to accept the consequences of defeat. Instead of saying we were defeated and Israel won, now they played the victim card. They have been playing the victim card for 70 years. And instead of accepting what is on the table to coexist with Israel, basically Israel was willing to withdraw from the West Bank and Gaza. That offer was on the table in 2000. And Yasser Arafat rejected that because the revolution has no purpose. The revolution is only for the sake of revolution. Bunch of con artists who only want to gain money and power. This is their game. And they have been using Arab children. The false narrative of a victim became global. It's definitely a bestseller narrative, but it's not a true story. Now, to build all these false accusations of apartheid, of genocide, of ethnic cleansing, only the Jewish people in the Middle East suffered ethnic cleansing and displacement. Only the Jewish people. The Arabs did not suffer the same consequences of the 1967 war because Israel did not force them to leave the territory after the war, while Egypt, your country, gave the Jewish people a 24-hour notice to depart Egypt. But the Jewish people did not do the same towards the Arabs. And this is how we have 2 million Arabs in Israel. So
the presentation you watched just now is a clear demonstration of how wide is the gap in perception between Israeli and the Palestinian point of view. So here I would like to bring in Ambassador Trigunayat, who has served as Indian ambassador to the Kingdom of Jordan, hence who can be better placed to unravel the contradiction, complexities and the aberrations in perception concerning this issue. I will begin by asking Ambassador Trigunayat, please tell me, what triggered this October 7? What is Iran, that is a Shia country, once the closest ally of Israel, sitting 1,786 kilometers away from Israel, has to do with this Sunni problem, especially in relation to Abraham Accord and how it is connected to all this. Who holds the string in this game of proxies? What are the intentions and objectives of these master puppeteers? What do you think is the solution?
Thank you very much, Group Captain Mehta and President Brigadier Sandeep Kumar, distinguished participants, dear friends. As we have seen this video, of course, it gives you pretty much a good history, but it also is in a way one-sided. And that is what is the narrative that one sees across, and that is one of the major problems that one faces in deciding on exactly how it should go. I mean, you are aware that it is more than 7 years old problem, which began actually with the Sykes-Picot Agreement, which divided the Ottoman spoils between the British and the French. And that continued for a long time. And thereafter, we had this famous Balfour Declaration of 1917, where within 67 words, Lord Balfour wrote a letter of 67 words to the Zionist movement leader, Rothschild, promising him a state of Palestine, a state of Israel in Palestine. And that's in Arthur Balfour's major contribution with that. Since then, at that time, the history suggests that there were over 90% of the population was that of Palestinians in that place. Of course, you can go back to 12th century, start talking of David, start talking of the other various pharaohs and whatnot. But at the same time, I think that we need to look at it from the 1948, because the British mandate lasted from 1923 to 48. When the United Nations Security Council came into being, a Security Council Resolution 181 was passed, which created two states. One is Palestine, other was the state of Israel. And of course, at the time of distribution of the territory, 55% of the land was allotted to the Israelis. And Israelis have been wanting their own state. And as has been rightly mentioned, there have been a Holocaust, there have been suffering all around the world, and they were brought from all those places, assisted by the Western countries mainly. And in the beginning, they were all even welcomed by the Arabs. But over time that they realized, and there was this Nakba that we very easily dismiss, happened when the Jews, and rightly so, if you think of the mentality and psyche of the people who have been uprooted for long and trying to find a land for themselves, they defend it at any cost. And that's what they were precisely doing at the time. But in the meantime, the Arabs refused to acknowledge that, refused to admit it, and they did not make it into a state. As you know, India had at that time opposed this creation of this and opposed the resolution and did not recognize until 1950 the state of Israel. And I would suggest that that is a very interesting phase that we need to understand and read about it. There have been subsequently, as you know, this was mentioned, there were 4 wars. The 67 war was the most decisive war as far as the Arabs and Israel was concerned. There they have taken over the Gaza, the West Bank, complete West Bank, and all these areas came into the Israeli control through the Sinai and all. Now, there are these figures which have been shown also, some of the pictures which show you how this expanded. Now, today, as a result of that, and the settlements, you can't just miss them out like that. You can't just, because this is against the international law. There was an agreement whereafter this was decided that there would be, and the Israelis have been part of it. Of course, I would not say that the Palestinians have been saints in this. They have also refused several times. They have continued to fight for, and Hamas-like organizations have been completely wanting to exterminate Israel. But during the Camp David agreements and the subsequent other Oslo agreements, it was agreed that Yasser Arafat had agreed to the recognition of Israel as a state, and there will be a two-state solution. So this has been agreed to, and this was also a part that East Jerusalem will be the capital of Palestine. Currently, they are located in Ramallah. And we know that this is despite the UN resolutions, despite the international efforts, the land for peace or peace to peace formula has continued to defy. The Gaza, as you know, was under the control of Israel until 2005. And in 2005, they vacated because of the internal pressures under Ariel Sharon. And then there were about 5,000 settlements were also there, settlers were there, who were also removed from there. That was a very difficult process, because once you settle them, it becomes a very major problem in order to remove them from there. But today what has happened is, as was mentioned, hundreds of thousands of settlers from all over the world have been brought and settled there. And the situation on the ground is, when we talk about two-state solution, the situation on the ground is that we have 78% of territory is currently under the control of the Israelis from 55. That is there. Rest, Ramallah and all, we say that governance, how it is done in terms of Zone A, Zone B, Zone C, depending on where Israel controls the security mode. Now, Gaza in 2006 had its elections. And after the elections, the Palestinian Authority or Al-Fateh, which was there, was defeated and evicted from there. And at that time, Hamas, which had been working on the ground, won that election. World did not recognize, because Hamas was seen as a terrorist organization by most countries. But there is also a swing to it. And that is that Hamas was actually also assisted, helped, nurtured by the Israeli leadership, including Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. And this is being written about a lot in the Israeli media and press, and happens to be a fact. And that's how they have survived until now. This problem between Israel and Hamas is existential threat. There is no doubt about it. So the Israel's decision after October 7, terrorist attacks, to go after them or destroy Hamas, was a legitimate response in that sense. Although you know that there have been wars between Hamas and Israel, which have continued for a shorter durations from in 2008, 2012, and the last one was during the pandemic in 2021. And there we have seen is that every time these happen, eventually they settle down, and there were reconstruction continuing with the help of Qatar and some other countries in the region. But in October 7, 2023 is an entirely different ballgame altogether. It was why did it happen? And everybody talks about Arabs, this, that. Arabs had given up this cause, in my view, a long time ago. There is, you can call it a Palestinian fatigue, but so they were all going by on this thing. They were normalizing ties with Israel under the US pressure, under their own pragmatic policies. And we saw that Abraham Accords happened under President Trump in 2021. I mean, that was some kind of a trigger that the Arab countries are actually abdicating. And that's when Iran and Turkey became the two major protagonists for the Palestinians and for the Gazans especially. So the Hamas in Gaza, that has been until then supported by them, became a part of the Iranian outfits, the proxies of Iran. And the two others that exist, in addition to several other militia, one is the Houthis. And I'm sure Admiral Sinha will be talking about them. And then the other one is the most powerful of the army is in Syria and in Lebanon, and that is called Hezbollah, which is a proper army, and that is also now flexing its muscles much more on the northern border with Israel. Now, even though why was Israel supporting Hamas? It was supporting because they did not want a united Palestinian movement. And so this was serving a political purpose. But as we all know, that this is something that does not last well, because if you are going to nurture these kind of organizations, eventually they are going to attack you. And over time, Hamas, by continuing to fight, whereas the Palestinian Authority, which was working closely under Mahmoud Abbas currently, working with the Israelis, and they have a mechanism that has been going on, hoping that one day they'll get their two-state, a proper state, which will be sovereign. We have seen that Hamas continued to fight. Now, the October 7th was really an unprecedented in many ways. The Hamas militant group, which is now, if you remember that yesterday there was an attack at Al-Mawasi in the southern part of Gaza, which was supposed to be a safe zone declared by Israel, that the internally displaced people can go and stay there. That was attacked. More than 90 people died there. And the attack was essentially to target, apparently, the Mohammed Diaf, who was the commander, basically a military leader of Hamas at the moment. But that has not happened. A lot of people have died in the process. So that has been the story. So October 7th, they came in a very clandestine manner. And apparently that needs to be studied by many people, that how these kind of non-state actors and terrorist groups are able to use that kind of access. But that also exposed, in my view, when they took away 246 hostages and they killed about 1192 Israeli civilians. And of course, that was a massacre. World was stunned and everybody condemned it, including the Arab countries. India was one of the first to condemn this terror act against the simple civilians there. But that also shows that today they were able to bust the invincibility dimension of the Israeli forces, Israeli defense forces, Israeli intelligence, and Israeli leadership. And that was precisely there. And that's the something. And secondly, as the news was coming out that Saudi Arabia was likely to normalize ties after the G20 summit in New Delhi with Israel. You see, when the first one, Abraham Accords, were signed, it was UAE, Bahrain, and later on Morocco and Sudan who had normalized ties. But the others were also talking to Israel in a big way. They were continuing to, whether it was sports diplomacy or others, even in Qatar, for that matter. And the Egypt and Jordan already had their peace treaties with Israel. So this was growing. In that sense, the Hamas realized that is the last bastion of their support, a moral support, because Saudi Arabia is also the leader of the Islamic world, especially the Sunni world. And therefore, if they were the ones who were also going to normalize ties with Israel, then obviously their last hope is gone. So that was one of the biggest, I would say, the incentive for Hamas to do what they did on October 7th. The response of Israel has always been security oriented, defending their country, trying to, inflict the maximum damage in an exemplary manner. That would eventually cause so much damage that they will not come back. But this has a catch to it. It has not successfully in 75, 78 years done anything to ensure their security. Rather, their security has been more compromised in the process because the country itself has become far more divided today. You have an ultra-rightist government in Israel, headed by Prime Minister Netanyahu. So those people like Smotrich, for example, the minister, was a settler himself.
Sorry, sir, may I intervene a little? I'm very sorry. If you can highlight the role of Iran, because the next section is Iran-centric in this issue, and then we will bring in.
I'm coming to that.
Yes.
You asked me 20 minutes or 15 minutes, right?
Yeah, sir.
Yeah.
Sure.
Okay. Then now the role of Iran that we're talking about, as I said rightly, that Iran and Israel have an existential threat, are existential sources of conflict in the region. And this has happened since 1979, since the Ayatollahs came to power. And since then, they have been trying to fight Israel and decimate it completely. It is also their philosophy that Israel does not have a right to exist, very simply. And likewise, Israel also wants to finish or decimate Iran as much as it can. And that's why Iran continues to have these proxies that are helping. Now there is, as I say, Hamas is supported morally and materially by Iranian regime. So is Hezbollah, which is also a very close part of it. Likewise, the Houthis, they are also very much linked with the Iranians. And that is a known fact. Everybody knows. In addition, in Iraq also you have Kataib Hezbollah, which is also, again, a part, in a way, of Shia militias which are working there. So Iran has that kind of a very important role to play in this. But the Iran said that on October 7th, it did not have any role as far as it is concerned. And it was also confirmed by the Americans that they don't have any intelligence to suggest that Iran was the one done, which promoted them. But these things keep on waiting. When you are supporting them, they're going to continue to have. Today also, we have seen that Iran and Israel came to war recently. They would have come to war. But for the fact that the whole world does not want this war to escalate beyond Gaza. And that's the reason the United States and everybody else intervened in this. And then they tried to contain the war. And And this happened because Israel also attacked the Iranian consulate, and where some of 6-7 people were died who used to belong to IRGC, and that's when Iran also, as a pro forma response, it gave. But what is happening is we are seeing now, as Hamas is losing ground, we are seeing that the Hezbollah is mounting more pressure, Houthis are mounting more pressure in the region. So Iran continues to be a very major player. And now with the new government also, we have seen that all these leaders keep on meeting and they keep on taking the guidance and support from Iran in that sense. So Iran will continue to be there. Few minutes on India. As I mentioned, that India has dehyphenated its policy towards the Middle East. Number one, especially between Israel and Palestine. We have seen that we have excellent relations, strategic partnership with Israel. At the same time, the Palestinian cause remains very important in our foreign policy, which has been made by statement. We want a two-state solution, and both these states living side by side with their complete sovereignty. But we want it through a dialogue, and we have promoted dialogue and diplomacy, whether it was in the UN Security Council or in the UN. We are against increasing settlements, and we have voted against Israel in that, in the UNGA and elsewhere about that. We had also recognized Palestine as a state. So India continues to be. Now you will say why it is that. This is a principled position that India had taken even before independence. But we have dehyphenated in the senses that our relationship with Israel stands on its own, whereas in Palestine and other Arab countries stands on its own. Our relationship with West Asia is extremely important for our own existence. That's what is the bigger factor. So in case the war escalates, it is going to impact on our own well-being. Why? Because of the energy security. We depend on 70-80% of our energy imports from there. We have about 9.4 million people who are living there in the region, and they are providing nearly $65 billion, $60 billion to India, which is about 1/10 of our foreign exchange reserves. Then you see the sea lanes of communication. Our trade depends a great deal on that. So anything, if happens, de-escalates and disrupts these, it is going to be a disaster for India also in particular. Therefore, we have to be very careful. We have to try to do some kind of a damage control so that this war continues. So that's why Prime Minister Modi spoke to Prime Minister Netanyahu, he spoke to President Abbas, he has spoken to all the Arab leaders and continues to talk to, so that there is some kind of a peace there. So I think that this is continuing. There is a Security Council resolution supported by the United States, which is being discussed currently in Doha. And hopefully, only yesterday, Benjamin Netanyahu said that he will not agree to permanent ceasefire. And therefore, even Hamas has been brought to bear on it, and they'll say, okay, we'll do that. So hopefully this particular piece of ceasefire proposal will continue, but till then, I think that we will have to be cautious, and we need to keep our fingers crossed that this war has a potential of further escalation. Thank you.
Thank you, Ambassador Trigunayat. Wonderfully. We will move on to our next section from West Asia to Iran. And because these two topics were put together because they are interrelated. Now bring in Admiral Sinha.
Well, I'm here.
Now, I want to know from you, sir, you have been very closely associated with Chahbahar port. And if I am not wrong, you were one of the pioneer senior naval officers who had interacted with the Iranian Navy to get this port be used for the purpose now we are seeing is happening, and the government, it led to the government-to-government agreement. Now that we have signed for the 10 years agreement, I'd like to know what is the importance of this corridor, Central Asia corridor for India, how India will be managing this contradiction between its strategic relation with Israel and our so much interest that is now linked to this corridor, which is now controlled by Iran, and how US and Russia will be viewing our participation in this corridor.
Am I audible?
Over to yes, you are audible, sir.
Thank you, IIRF, for giving me this platform to share whatever I know about Chahbahar project. But it will be important to show you the first map which I want to show. so that we are aware that when we are referring to Bandar Abbas, Chahbahar, etc., where they are located. So can we have the map, the first one, please?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. I can enlarge it. Done.
Yeah, thank you. I think it's visible to everybody as to where is what. This is primarily to, not that people don't know, but just to give you a relative distances of these ports. First that I have marked is Gwadar, which is in Pakistan. And in black line is the border between Iran and Pakistan, which is this is the border. Iran and Pakistan, which is this is the border. And when you come to the Iranian side, the Chahbahar port is here, which is just inside the little distance from Gwadar. I'll tell you later what distance. Now this is called the Gulf of Oman, which is outside the Straits of Hormuz. This is the Straits of Hormuz, which is a very narrow path, and the ships have to follow some kind of discipline to navigate from this area. So Chahbahar is here. It is clear of the Straits of Hormuz. On this side is Muscat, and neighboring is Pakistan, and this indeed in Iran. Whereas Bandar Abbas, which you keep hearing, Bandar Abbas is here right at the tip of the Straits of Hormuz. So why it is important is because I will be talking about the international north-south trade corridor first, so that we know how Chahbahar is going to be a little different. Okay, can we go to the next one? About international, next one, not this one, the next one. We'll come. The international north-south transport corridor, it's about 7,200 kilometers. And basically, it's a multimodal. Multimodal meaning, a shape, there is road, there is railway, and so on. Yeah, there you are.
Is this fine, sir?
No, this is, okay, one on the left. Okay, fine. Now you can see here, and that runs from Bandar Abbas. This is Baku. Baku is a port in Azerbaijan on the Caspian Sea. And from here to Astrakhan, then Moscow, St. Petersburg, and goes to Europe, and likewise right up to Mumbai. Now, this was an agreement which was signed quite some time back in between amongst the three countries, right? The Russia, India, and Iran. But after that, there have been number of sanctions on Iran, so Iran had to develop all this on their own. But I am to report that it is operational and it is very much in use. What you see there is a road network. The whole idea was that to give a corridor, it was to give a trade connectivity between major cities from Mumbai, Moscow, Tehran, Baku, Bandar Abbas, Astrakhan, Bandar Anzali, which is also again on the Caspian Sea, and that falls in Iran. Iran has got 3-4 ports there. So this is, this is what. Now, why we have done we did some trials, and it worked out that the cost is reduced quite a lot if you have to take it any other way, and it's nearly $2,500 per 15 tons of cargo is the reduction. Other routes under consideration includes Kazakhstan and Turkmenistan, and they have to join this somewhere near Turkmenistan, which I'll come to a little later. Can you go to the next map, please? So primarily, what it is going to achieve, there is something called an east-west corridor, which joins the Russian network from the 3 Central Asian republics and comes and terminates into the project that I just talked about, INSTC, right? Yeah. Now, Azerbaijan is a very important country as far as these trade routes are concerned, because this NSTC route actually allows India, Iran, Azerbaijan, Russia, and Kazakhstan transport connectivity, and that gives us access to rest of the Central Asia. it was announced in long back, almost 6-7 years ago, that the construction of the Kazvin to Rasht rail route is 90% complete. During my Moscow visit recently, I am told that this connectivity is all functional from Azerbaijan to right up to the Iranian railway station, Rasht. It's a very long one, and from, shall I say, from Turkmenistan to Kazakhstan to Uzbekistan, they're all small sections, 300 kilometers, 400 kilometers, and each country is spending money to make this railway line. Now, the only hurdle is that Iranian track, the railway track, the width is different than rest of the countries. Rest of the countries and India use a standard track, whereas Iran uses a non-standard track. And therefore, the railway network in Iran, if we have to use it, then we have to use only Iranian network. You'll not be able to use any other railway line unless you lay your own track. Why I'm giving this background is because you will see as we go along that it is not all hunky-dory. Recently, we heard that some huge cargo has come from Russia to India through the containers through this route following the INSTC. So it was offloaded in Bandar Abbas, and it was taken by ship, brought by ship to Mumbai and other ports where it is destined for. Now, why do we require Chahbahar, and why can't we do with the Bandar Abbas port? Two things. Bandar Abbas is inside the Gulf, which puts a little bit of geopolitical limitation, what Ambassador Anil Trigunayat was talking about. Because negotiating the Straits of Hormuz and getting inside, and it is right on the tip of the, on the Straits of Hormuz. So it is a little bit risky in case of a war. Somebody can close the, the Straits of Hormuz. For all you know, that somebody may be Iran only, who knows? And therefore, the second point is that the depth of water there is not very deep, and therefore it can handle ships with a maximum tonnage of probably 45 to 60,000 tons. And the handling capacity of the port is slightly less because it cannot take bigger ships. So in 2002, Group Captain Mehta talked about my indulgence. In 2002, we had made a proposal, that we should have a separate track from Chabahar into Afghanistan because we were not getting road access through Pakistan. As you know, that even now it is not given. So that time, the Chief of Naval Staff, Admiral Madhvendra Singh, he had gone on an official trip to Iran, and I was in the fleet. I was fleet operation officer. So I was told to make some proposal and forward it to the naval headquarters. So this is the track that we had drawn from Chabahar to Zaranj. Zaranj is in Afghanistan, and then connect up with the Zaranj Dilaram road, which has already been built by the BRO. Okay, you see in this map. This is Chabahar, and here it comes into Zaranj, which is in Afghanistan. Thereafter, the road from Dilaram to Kabul is already existing, and there was some talk that from here we will use the road network and get into Uzbekistan. All this was being done primarily to make sure that we have connectivity and we have our transportation of trade, right up to Central Asia and outwards. Now, thereafter, now we come to the Chabahar port problem. In 2002, it was actually one MOU, or just what shall I say, not a serious MOU was signed. In the minutes of meeting, it is quoted between the two chiefs, the Iranian naval chief and the Indian naval chief, that it should be examined for future so that India can get access to Afghanistan and help the Afghanis to build that country. And mind you, that time the Taliban had just come into power, and they were about to be removed by a unity government, and the Americans were very close to achieving that. So this is what is the background. But however, by the time it came into being, by the time the final agreement has been signed, that is in the year 2013. In 2013, uh, the Chinese had a new prime minister, Li Xiang. Now Li Xiang came on a first India trip, and he didn't go to Delhi. He came to Bombay. And Bombay, there was a CII meeting where he was giving a talk on how the trade can be improved. Now, there I was also in the meeting. It was an evening where all people were invited in Bombay. And I met the American gentleman who was from the consulate. And he mentioned that why isn't India going ahead of with signing of the Chabahar agreement? So I mentioned to him that, we don't know how the Americans will take it. Will they accept it? Because, the Iranians were already under some kind of sanction. So he said that my view is that, nothing, they shouldn't upset the Americans. I said, fine. Now, next day, I came to know that the Prime Minister of China, who will be visiting Islamabad and Rawalpindi after his Mumbai visit, he will actually fly down to Tehran on a day visit and meet the Ayatollah. And apparently, the subject to be spoken or the matter which was to be discussed in a hurry, that China wanted to offer its help to make the Chahbahar port, develop the Chahbahar port, if the Indians are not very keen, because India had not played ball for quite some time, or nor did the Iranians. They both worried about the how much will the American sanction sort of impact. But the Americans had said, they've gone in writing when they were later on, when they put a lot of new sanctions on Iran, saying that the Chabahar project will remain out of this ambit because it is meant for supplying relief material to Afghanistan from India. And by then, the Americans had by and large about to pull out from that place. So in 2013, very hurriedly, the India's then deputy, or he was the foreign minister, Salman Khurshid, he flew down to Tehran. When they came to know that the Pakistanis are taking some initiative, he flew down and very quickly signed an MOU with the Iranians. 2013. But because of the series of sanctions, no contractor was willing to take on this work, because they were under sanction. They would have been sanctioned for any other work in future. Also, the money to be paid, the banks were not accepting it, because those banks were under sanction. They will not be able to deal in dollar terms, and they will be barred from doing any dollar business in future. So that was the background with which it was working. But subsequently, the Indian government and persuaded the Americans, saying that, look, we have to use this for building the Afghans back to what they were earlier, because people are suffering, and that project should not be seen in that light. So the Americans gave an exception, and then the entire thing was built. It is operational. It is operational from Chahbahar to Zaranj to Dilaram to the capital. So that is one good fact. Now, how did it happen? The government of India created a company called IGPL, Indian Ports Global Limited, and from the Iranian side, it was Port and Maritime Organization, in short, PMO. And they wanted to make sure that the operations begin. So what you heard recently, that the port has become operational, and it has been given on 10-year operational lease to IGPL to go ahead and start using it as a regular basis. So this port is, by the way, also called the Shahid Beheshti Terminal. The Iranians call it a Shahid Beheshti Terminal. This agreement is part of India's strategic and economic vision for the Central Asian Republic. So, just for knowledge that, Chabahar falls in the Sistan province and Baluchistan province on the other side of Pakistan. As you know that the this area is very hot. You keep having some issues there, some firing and some attacks here and there. That is because of the Gwadar port, which is not very far, which I showed in the first slide. Chabahar project has basically two main ports called the Shahid Kalantari port and Shahid Beheshti port. Iran has offered India the project of developing Shahid Beheshti port, which was well received in our country. Now, this memorandum was actually signed in 2015. And also in 2016, a trilateral agreement was signed between Afghanistan, Iran, and India, also called the Chahbahar Agreement. Now, this is also an international transport and transit corridor. Now, this will give connectivity. This has given connectivity to these three countries. India coming to Chahbahar, this port is operational, and the transportation of the goods is already taking place. The only point of disagreement was before operationalizing was the location of arbitration of disputes. India preferred a neutral country, whereas Iran insisted its own court or some court which is favorable to it should be handling this. The contract has actually stipulated that disagreement should be settled through open communication and cooperation between the leaders. So it has also got an automatic renewal provision. In case nothing happens, this will continue to keep getting renewed. Historically, India's access to Afghanistan and Central Asia has largely depended on transit routes through Pakistan, which does not exist. So Chabahar port offers an alternate route, and therefore it is strategically very important, and it bypasses Pakistan altogether. Also, Chabahar will boost India's access to Iran and key gateway to international north-south trade corridor, which I mentioned earlier. Now, in the last visit to Moscow and track 2, track 1.5, we're trying to see how Chabahar port can actually, or the road and railway network can be connected to INSTC, so that we can ride that route as well. Connected so that we are. So what is happening right now that there are 2-3 routes within Moscow, within Russia, where the road network from all three countries of the Central Asian republics, they come and join Moscow. And then that road actually goes and joins the INSTC on the Azerbaijan side. And there is also a railway station, Barkat, which is the very big railway station. Now it has become operational. I just read it about a month ago. So we'll have this economic benefit. India can diversify its trade routes and gain enhanced access to markets into Russia, Eurasia, Europe, apart from Iran and Afghanistan. Cargo movement through INSTC route is expected to 30% less in cost and 40% less in the transportation time. So I would say that Chabahar port, many people say that Chabahar port is a counter to the development of Gwadar. I completely disagree, because when we first started talking about this, it was 2002, when Gwadar was not born. China was not in Gwadar at that time. So to say that it is a counter, I would say sorry. Actually, Gwadar is a counter to the Chabahar port, because this project was going on, and the Pakistanis made use of Chinese to comment upon this. At the moment, it is also crucial port for the humanitarian assistance to Afghanistan. You all know, after post COVID-19, how bad situation exists in Afghanistan. And Indians are ones who are, the first consignment was 2.5 million tons of wheat, and 2,000 tons of pulses have gone through Chabahar port. In 2021, 40,000 liters of eco-friendly pesticide malathion to Iran through the port to combat the locust attack in Iran. So what will happen to how do you look at it strategically or geopolitically, which should interest most of us because we are students of geopolitics. Now, by developing and operating this port, India can enhance its strategic influence in the Indian Ocean region, and therefore, improve its situation, political, geopolitical presence in the Gulf. Right now, we will have an port where we are operating right in the mouth of Gulf. And also, India can effectively respond to cases of sea piracy and serve as the first line of defense in the Arabian Sea due to docking facilities available at Chabahar. Now, what are the challenges that we need to see? What are the areas where we can, get stumped? The first thing is the concern of sanctions of US on Iran. The United States also warned India, if you recall, when this agreement was signed for 10 years, a potential risk of sanctions after the long-term thing was signed. Earlier, US Embassy has imposed restriction on activities with Iran under various legal authorities since 1979, following the seizure of the US Embassy in Tehran. Those of you who recall this incident, you will connect up these two. In 2018, US granted India an exemption from specific sanctions in order to support the advancement of Chahbahar port. And that was done specifically to help the Afghanistan. Also, I must add, it is important, India has also been exempted from any sanction to make railway connectivity from Chabahar right up to Afghanistan following this same route, Zaidan, Zaranj, Dilara. What has happened to that? It has not moved very much. India had also sanctioned $500 million and offloaded a lot of railway stocks for the Iranians to build. But no contractor is willing to do it. That is because of the sanction on their trade or their activities in the banking network. That is one. What has happened now with the Houthis rebels, who have disrupted the sea lanes of communication in the Red Sea, which you are all aware, and it can affect the traffic in Chabahar as well. So this is a problem because it's not very far. Iran is directly, indirectly involved in the Houthi attacks which are taking place, and Iran is always under threat from the Israelis. So this can also be a cause of concern. The US exit from Afghanistan and the return of Taliban there have created an unstable situation which can have a slightly negative influence on trade with India. However, I believe that some of the talks at the business people level in Afghanistan is happening with Taliban, and they have accepted that no, it is helpful to Afghanistan. Taliban are also Afghans, and therefore we are not going to put any kind of restriction or any attack on the Indian trade which comes through this route. So this is a negative influence on the trade relation that we have with Afghanistan. Unstable relation between Iran and some of the neighbors such as Israel, as well as unstable political situation in neighboring countries like Afghanistan and Pakistan, are also taking a toll on India's economic interest. However, it has commenced, and I am sure that India will be able to navigate this as well. I heard that some consignment has already come. The railway line, which is under construction, it will not only go up to Zaidan and Zaranj, but it will be further extended up to a place called Mashhad. Mashhad is on border of Turkmenistan and Iran in the north, and it's a very big station and a very big business center. If that happens, the Iranians are supposed to build in their own track width, but the money will be paid by the Indian government, so that now the trade can proceed on the trains and road right up to Mashhad, and from there into Turkmenistan. Now, there is also a agreement called the Asbagat agreement, which was actually speaking only between amongst three countries. But unfortunately, the Turkmenistan, anyone that Turkmenistan is a neutral country, it doesn't sort of take very active interest in these projects which are going on. It wants to remain outside the ambit. But apparently, some talk is on. Prime Minister Modi, during his last visit to Turkmenistan, he has invited Turkmenistan to join the Asbagat, membership and join the INSTC and the project that we are launching, so that we can connect up Mashhad with Turkmenistan and also use this Baku route to join up with the trade which is coming from INSTC, which is emanating from Bandar Abbas. So what I'll do is I'll put a stop. But just before I finish, the India, Middle East, Europe economic corridor, that is actually in a competition. But I think my own view, I think Ambassador Trigunayat may be, better position to talk on that. That in my view, it is good that we got operational Chahbahar project, so that now that the IMEC is under serious sort of question mark, we can continue to use this corridor and put our trade through this route. Right now, actually, the road is connected right from Chahbahar right up to the border of Iran. So that route is existing, and the east-west corridor of Central Asia and Russia exists. So it's just a matter of connecting up and stitching these two things. The talks are going on. It's a very active, very, shall I say, an advanced stage of talks, if you like, so that the impact of IMEC is somehow mitigated to some extent. So I'll stop here, and if there are questions, I'll take. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Admiral Sinha, sir. You have given tremendous insight on this project. Many are not aware the details of it, although we know that there is a corridor is coming up and it is highly beneficial for India. It has been very, very unfortunate, misfortune of India that after independence, only 5%, less than 5% of India's percent of its total world trade has been transiting to the land route, thanks to Pakistan. And this has really impacted our economic development tremendously. And now that this corridor is seeing the light of the day, a huge opportunity is going to come up at the right time when India is at the threshold of stage to take off economically. So that is tremendous. And I had a question to Admiral Sinha, that how India is going to navigate the choppy waters between Israel, strategic relation with Israel, and its sworn enemy, Iran.
Coming back to the question that Captain Mehta asked as to how India is going to navigate this. Well, if I have to give one word answer, I will say with difficulty. It's not going to be easy for diplomats, and I'm sure that Ambassador Anil Trigunayat, one of his kind people, must be working very hard to find a solution as to how. And I mentioned that U.S. sanctions, the Israel Hamas war, which is going on right now, all this have very serious impact. But I think that avoiding U.S. sanction, is going to be really very, very tough work, for a simple reason that our equation with U.S., every day it seems to be, doing this up and down, whatever is happening. Particularly when Prime Minister Modi went to Russia and he hugged, the Russian president. Though they are wrongly quoting that a lot of agreements of supply of weapon has been signed, weapon systems, it is wrong. Only the IGL, the intergovernmental letter agreement, which support the logistics and maintenance of these equipment which are already existing. There is no new equipment being agreed upon. Nothing, not even a single one. So, which finally, some sense has prevailed in the US administration. And I think they are saying that, okay, after all, his visit has not impacted India-US relation after all. So this is a statement which some official from State Department has made. So, but it's not going to be easy because, India in its own maintaining strategic autonomy and depending, the fact remains that Russia is much more dependable partner, and it is much older equation. So I would think that there is no way that India is going to break off completely from Russia. There may be trade difference. The problem is not that. The problem is this transportation and oil money, which has been paid in rupees. How are they going to use it? That is the biggest problem that MEA is now facing. However, we happened to meet the ambassador in Moscow the other day, and he said, "Sir, hum log kar to rahe, we are doing it after all, but it will not last for very long." He's right. I mean, this was one of the matters which have been discussed threadbare, and I believe, I don't know the between the lines things have not come out, but I believe that, the Russians will probably do an investment in India using the rupee into infrastructure projects, etc., etc. And let's say out in one way out. I don't know how many ways are there, but this is one way out, that they can invest that money in India itself for the one point I forgot to mention, that the Bandar Abbas port, it can handle ships only up to a draft of 9.1 meters. So that puts a limitation. And that only makes about 50,000 tonnage of ships which can go alongside. And that requires very large number of ships to transport certain amount of cargo. Whereas the, is a deep port, deep draft. Chahbahar. Deep depth port is almost more than 12 meters. And it can handle ships up to more than 100,000 tons. So ये बहुत बड़ा advantage है. And I think that a lot of Iranian goods also will start now coming to this place, to Chahbahar. Because in one consignment, they can have large number of containers, many containers, and it can be lifted. The main trouble is that, transportation within Iran, if it has to be done by train, the track of the train is only Iranians have it. Nobody's got it. So that is one, one way it is good that the Iranians are earning money. The railways are earning money and all that stuff. So problem, yes, but India enjoys very good equation with Iran, civilizational, historical, and also Iran has been supported. India also, actually speaking, when the JCPOA was being signed and some exemptions were required, India acted at the back, getting these two countries to talk to each other when President Obama was the president. So these things happen in diplomacy, which you don't get to know. The heads of state, when they are advised that why, like a lot of people are saying, why don't you bring peace between Ukraine and Russia? So the Indians are not sitting quiet. There's a lot of back channel diplomacy is on. And also, I'm sure that this time also, he made a public statement, joint statement, Prime Minister Modi, that, the death of children is absolutely unacceptable. And he was referring to the attack, which was just done, a day earlier or maybe on the same day. So these are, when good friends begin to tell a country that, look, this is not very good, I think it makes it. But the country which has got alarmed by this hug, the enveloping of President Putin by Prime Minister Modi, is China. China has got very alarmed that, they don't want this closeness to improve. So it has got the flip side. So much so that while I was just reading a Russian newspaper, not newspaper, the online magazine, where it says that China is so alarmed that on the day that Prime Minister Modi met President Putin in the evening before they left, there was a message on a WhatsApp message or something, some message from Wang Yi to NSA, Doval, that China is ready to discuss and move ahead on resolving border issue. So this is the direct impact of, the hug. So while some people are angry, it may have some, other flip side. It's always so in diplomacy. It is never done with once. I mean, like Prime Minister Modi going to Austria. I haven't figured out why. Maybe Mr. Trigunayat knows better. But I'm still trying to figure out, there are many things which are happening, science, technology, research work.
It's also a non-NATO country.
Yeah, and it's only non-NATO country. So India is probably trying to show some kind of, neutrality with, friendship with the neutral countries. Which is,
They might be acting as a conduit also.
I think
I will open the questions. If there are any questions, please speak later. Any questions? Maybe Murthy, sir.
Yeah. First of all, let me thank Ambassador Trigunayat and Admiral Sinha for their, covering the issue in a very nice and concise manner. See, my question to Ambassador Trigunayat is that, we find a lot of sympathy and a lot of support coming for Hamas and Palestinians in the universities and academia of United States, and also in these universities which are of very high repute. Is it because that a lot of Islamic nation professors have joined these universities and have been able to change the narrative? And if so, in future, how the Israeli the leadership is going to change their strategy or see in future how to go about it?
Well, sir, it's a very interesting question. And what it shows is that over the years, the United States is basically run by lobbies of different kinds. The Jewish lobby is the most powerful lobby in the United States. We all know that. And they virtually control the foreign policy of the country as well. But over time, what we have seen is because of various people coming in, and as you rightly mentioned, there are several professors and there are a lot of people who are on the side, and just this violence being reported to this extent have converted it to this. The young people really, the local Americans and others, don't have an idea exactly. They just see that there's so much violence has happened. The terror group or terror act is forgotten in that sense. So this is what I feel is that all over Europe and the United States, the Arab lobby has become far more stronger. And it is also equally getting much more traction than what was earlier. Now, Biden, for example, is also in certain states where the Arabs are in majority. He's losing it now, elections. So it is also for themselves locally. And I think that Israel will have to, and all the Jews in USA are not very pleased with Netanyahu and the ultra-rightist group. So that is another issue that they are facing. So until and unless they address their domestic problems within Israel, it will be very difficult to change the perspective outside. And I think that is strategy. Israel is very good in these, but Israel will have to probably modify their strategy. They cannot simply bank on a part of the Jewish lobby pushing their cause.
Mr. Trigunayat. Any other questions?
Sir, with your permission to take on Marshal Murthy's question and Ambassador's answer. Sir, when you about the support for Israel for Palestine in US campuses, you see, one problem could be there is an underlying fear in the US that were the US to deploy troops in support of Israel, like it did in support of Vietnam or later in Iran and Afghanistan, they would effectively, body bags will start coming back. And secondly, you see, when you talk about Jewish lobbies controlling the US, it's not just the US, it's better part of Western Europe has a strong Jewish presence. Because the current new Prime Minister, Keir Starmer in the UK, he's married to a lady of the Jewish faith. And the outgoing Tory government, the Home Secretary Braverman is married to a Jewish gentleman. So the Jewish presence is very strong in most of Europe, not just in the US. So
no, you are right. I mean, you are right about it. But I was addressing only the US issue. But I said that in the Western countries, the Arab lobbies are becoming quite strong, Palestinian issue. So it is true that, I mean, the Arab lobbies today are not in a position to match. But this is the first time that we are witnessing that they have become far more stronger a force. You know, in Western countries, it is no longer the same that you can do anything and the Jewish lobby will be able to do that. So it's also a challenge for them. And I have served in the US and I know how it operates also. Here also, as soon as after October 9th, you know, President came here, immediately he deployed his naval assets there, you know, in the vicinity. But then US also does not know how to get out of this situation because Netanyahu is also not listening to him. He has been wanting some kind of a ceasefire. Finally, the US had to take the ceasefire proposal to the UN Security Council. So you can imagine, I mean, there's a situation, and so many times the Secretary Blinken is virtually in the region, talking to try to persuade these guys to stop the war, because this is also costing them at home. So that's what is important. And I agree with you totally. I mean, they don't like body bags, and this will continue to be there.
Okay, I think Dr. Krishnam had a question.
Thank you, Ambassador Anil Trigunayat, sir. It was very nice explanation. I totally agree with the two-state solution and its limitation. And it is possible only when you are right, that when Israel will realize it and it will be imposed by the world power. But during this Gaza war underway, the Chinese and the Russians, they have coordinated their effort. And from the day one, they have sent their envoys and they're having the coordinated effort. And they are making demand assertively about the two-state solution based on the 1967 borders. So this is going on, and this can be given the global geopolitical situation and changes. And the US is now not having the complete control over the Middle East, and the kind of economic heft and the slowly political and military engagement of China and Russia in this region. Now the solution, it looks like, as you are telling, the second part, the realization on this part of Israel will come only when these global powers will put their, you can say, united effort. Then only the solution possible. Otherwise, for 1 century it is going on. And Jeff Jabotinsky's the Iron Wall policy in 1923 onward, the Israel has pursued that. But time has come, it has reached hitting to the, I think, you can say dead end. And now they have to realize, and they have to come, and some kind of solution has to be taken. This is my observation. I'm trying to understand that way.
Yeah.
Listener, audience, Miss Kulkarni.
Yeah, please go ahead, make it brief, please.
Yeah, I'm Group Captain Ravindra Kulkarni, actually.
Okay.
Just on a lighter note, as we see in a very interesting conversation that was happening, the lobbies becoming very powerful and also intercepting through the nationhoods and all that we are witnessing to this. Now, a little curiosity. I had a question to Ambassador Trigunayat, sir, that are you being taught about lobby managements internationally in your diplomacy schools?
Well, sir, I think this is very much a part of the gray zone warfare. And
Lest
yes,
so dangerous.
I can tell you, when I was posted in New York, that's when I got first time saw it, how it works. The Pakistanis had hired 4 lobby firms on Kashmir to lobby against us. And we struggled even to get one during my time, but we finally got one. Because this is how you work at the Capitol, you work everywhere, wherever the decision makers are there. So I think that this is something very much an integral part of the gray zone warfare. And that is something, and to protect your own interests. And that's why I think in India, and we created, I mean, I can share with you, we created an India interest group on the Capitol with the senior officials of the multinational corporations to help us in that, because India was opening up in 90s, economic reforms and also they saw an opportunity in India. So it does work. But you are right. I mean, we need to do a little more. I personally feel that our communication strategy still needs to be honed up properly.
Ambassador, sir, talking of lobbying and lobbyists, I'll tell you my personal experience in seeing RUSI in UK, London Chatham House. RUSI is totally under the control of Qatar. Chatham House is under the control of Saudi Arabia. IISS is under the control of Bahrain. And I've attended events on Pakistan where there was not a single Indian speaker and one member of the audience who's an Indian, who took the trouble to put across the Indian view. I've even attended such events where there was a sole Indian in the whole hall talking of India's view.
I agree with you. I mean, this is where we have to have a composite strategy.
Yeah,
I think that's where IIRF fills the gap as a global think tank.
Okay, thank you. With this, we will end our discourse today. Admiral Sinha, sir, anything you would like to say in the last word?
Well, just to say that RUSI, you should be very careful about dealing with them, because the chairs that they've established, most of them are funded by the ISI front.
Yeah. And
they come as a very sort of innocent looking organization, will come and have a bilateral with ORF, bilateral with us, bilateral with USI. And we, in our own excitement, we tend to discuss many things we should not have been, because all that goes back to Pakistan.
No, you're right, sir. I've met, for example, Air Commodore Adil Sultan, who's one of the primary hawks in the Pakistan nuclear establishment. I, in fact, had an argument once with him in RUSI.
Yeah, you're right. So I think we have to be very careful. I know once they were coming to USI here, and the things we discussed was, Kashmir and border management and all that in India. And they were all sort of, very innocent looking British people who had come. And I was heading the IDS headquarters. And, we got our input from the High Commission. And, we had to ring up the president of the director of the USI and had to cancel it, because it was one day notice. It had to be cancelled, because, it was raised at a very high level and, it had to be. put down. Because MEA was not very happy about it because they had also got some note. We got our note through our own channels. And MEA, the High Commissioner, had made a note to it.
That means all think tanks are not so innocent, just like NGOs.
None of them are innocent.
None of them is innocent.
Don't say so. None of them are innocent.
Absolutely.
Ambassador Trigunayat, sir, any last word you would like to say, or anybody? Then I will request President IIRF to say a few words of thanks and sum up if needed. Muralidharan, sir, you are expectantly looking. Want to say something, sir?
No, I think between Shekhar and Ambassador Anil, they have said everything.
Yes, so Ambassador Trigunayat, sir, please.
Well, I just want to say that West Asia is extremely important for us. And we have to be present there. I'm happy to see that we have started engaging them in a sub-regional and regional formats. And there is a great expectations from India in the region. Fortunately, Prime Minister Modi's foreign policy, West Asia has been one of the success story. So that's a very good thing for us.
Brigadier Sandeep, sir, will you like to say the
Yeah,
last word and thank?
We have already crossed the time limit. I just want to say a few things. Ambassador Trigunayat has brought out the aspect of the Saudi Arabia trying to normalize relations with Israel, and that's a time when Hamas took the thing. And that is one, the other Muslim countries there didn't want this to happen. They think that is a good learning for us. And then actually, if you see that area, since the time of BC 600, it has been in trouble. Initially, after Jerusalem was established, it was captured by the Muslims. Then the Crusades took place, and after the Crusades in 1260, 1291, the Egyptian Ayyubid dynasty took over, and it has been a place from it has been a location where it has been continuously going on this trouble, and this trouble will keep happening. They may come up with two states, again, things will happen. That is what has happened after 1967 and 1973 warfare. So that we have to be very updated as our Indian diplomacy. As Admiral Sinha sir has talked about the Chahbahar INSTC to a great extent, because our things will go through that. So now IMEC is gone for a 6 because of this Israel thing, because it is supposed to go through that. So these things are hum up, and I'm sure the people who attended have learned from this. Thing I would like to say, when we, as India, as trying to be number 3 in the world, so when you consider the current geostrategic and geopolitical environment, the Israeli-Hamas conflict can't be analyzed in isolation. The Ukraine-Russia warfare, the Chinese aggressive stance on Taiwan in South China Sea and against Philippines, the refugees trouble in Europe, interference in international affairs of global South countries using domains of gray zone, which is already brought out. Gray zone, using all domains of gray zone, including conduct of democratic elections. Effort to colonize space, that's also happening. You are very aware of it. And also the cyberspace and data colonization. Everything has to be seen together and analyzed to come to a solution for us to become number 3 country in the world economically, as also controlling all this action which is going to happen in India. Gray zone warfare is actually affecting us in a very bad way, including the domain of cyber, space, politics, and governance. Everything is coming in. So that's all from my side. And thank you very much, sir, Ambassador Trigunayat, sir, and Admiral Shekhar Sinha, sir, for giving a very good discourse on the subject. And thanks all for attending it. And I'm sure everybody would have gained out of this great talk. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. My last 2 words are that Indians' heart goes for Israel, but realism is taking it towards Iran. About the solution, I would say that unless Iran and its proxies drop the idea of destruction and annihilation of Israel from their agenda, this problem is not going to solve, because Israel is not going to allow itself to be destroyed, and these people are hell-bent for 1,000 years agenda to destroy it, and that's the crux of the problem. And I think it will give a lot of employment to the analysts and the ambassador, diplomats, and strategic analysts. For 1,000 years, our hands are full. Thank you very much, sir.
Namaskar, Jai Hind, everybody.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you all. Thank you, sir.
Lovely session, sir. Thank you.
Thank you. Please do subscribe
and
watch out for the next episode.